She was always complaining about my geese, saying they were aggressive and noisy, until one day she filed a lawsuit, claiming that they had attacked her in my yard. But the truth? It didn't take long for the judge to discover that she had trespassed on my property and tried to steal one of the geese. Some people move into a neighborhood and think they own it. That's exactly what happened when this woman decided to show up here. From the day she set foot on this piece of land, she acted as if she were some kind of HOA sheriff, checking every detail and making life hell for everyone who didn't fit into her concept of perfect. And me? Well, I have geese. Yes, geese. And anyone who has been lucky enough or unlucky enough to come across one knows very well that they are basically dinosaurs with feathers, equipped with a questionable sense of humor and a born talent for spreading chaos. But I love these creatures. I bought a small group to help keep the yard free of pests, and they ended up becoming part of the family. They have space, food, live happily, and, of course, don't take any crap from anyone. At first, I thought this woman would just ignore them and get on with her life. But that was too much to ask. Within the first week, she appeared clapping her hands at my gate as if she were calling a waiter in the middle of a restaurant. When I went to answer the door, I was confronted with her figure, arms crossed, a face like she'd just sucked a lemon, and an expression of disgust looking at the geese. "These things make a lot of noise," she announced, as if giving me an order. "Ah, that's it." I tried to be polite and explained that the geese had always been there, that they were part of the property, and that, well, they weren't a problem for anyone but her. But the woman insisted, saying that the sound was unbearable and that I should do something about it, as if geese had a volume knob. From then on, the harassment began. Every week there was a new complaint. First, it was the noise. Then she started telling the neighbors that my geese were aggressive, that they almost attacked her during a walk. Then she tried to get the HOA involved, saying that farm animals weren't allowed there. The detail? My property didn't fall under the HOA's rules, but she didn't care. When she realized that no one was paying attention to her personal crusade against geese, the woman tried to call the police. Yes, the police. About geese. Fortunately, the policemen who showed up were nice people, and when I explained the situation, one of them laughed and said, "Ma'am, geese are not weapons. That should have been the end of it." But of course, she wouldn't accept losing, especially as, in her mind, the real solution to the problem wasn't to make me get rid of the geese. It was to have one for herself, and that's when it got even better. If this woman was already unbearable before, after the police left, she reached a new level of obsession. The fact that the officers hadn't done anything about my geese seemed to be a personal offense to her. It was as if, at that moment, she had decided that she wasn't going to rest until she had taken revenge. First came the veiled threats. She started dropping hints every time she passed my house. She'd stand there, looking at the geese with the air of someone planning something, and she'd always drop an annoying comment to the neighbors. "Oh, how dangerous it is to have these animals loose. Someone could get badly hurt." I ignored it, because frankly, I was used to her daily chirping. But what I didn't expect was for this woman to have the courage to actually do something stupid. And, my friends, she did. It was a hot night, one of those nights when the air is heavy and silence dominates the neighborhood. I was just getting ready for bed when I heard strange noises coming from the yard. They weren't normal sounds. It wasn't a cat rummaging through the garbage or the wind shaking the branches. It was something different. I sneaked out without turning on the lights and slowly approached the back gate. And that's when I saw it. The woman was inside my yard. Yes, she had pulled over the fence in the middle of the night. And not only that, she was trying to catch one of my geese. Now, I need to pause here to remind you of something very important. Geese are not easy animals to deal with. They are temperamental, quick, intelligent, and above all, vengeful. And there she was, kneeling on the ground, trying to grab one of the most temperamental of the group, a male called Gregorio. who doesn't take any crap. And what happened next? Gregorio fought back. When I saw the scene, my first instinct was simply to watch. After all, how do you stop a disaster that's about to be incredible? She tried to pull Gregorio up by his wings while he struggled, squirmed, and let out those war cries that only geese know how to make. But when he realized he was being held against his will, he activated berserker mode. He was pecked on the arm, a peck on the leg, a peck on the hand. She tried to push him away, but Gregory doesn't forgive betrayal. And it was at that moment, as she struggled desperately to escape the fury of the feathered dinosaur, that I did the only thing that was right at that moment. I took out my cell phone and started filming. Because, honestly, some works of art need to be immortalized. The woman tried to run, but tripped, fell to the ground and dragged her knees through the grass, while Gregorio ran after her with the rage of someone who has just escaped from a kidnapping. She managed to get up, climbed over the fence in the most pathetic way possible, and ran off staggering, her clothes torn and her arms full of red marks from pecking. I couldn't hold back my laughter. It was a scene worthy of a documentary about savage justice. But, contrary to what any normal person would do after such a fiasco, this woman didn't stay quiet. She sued me. Yes, you read that right. The next day, I received a court summons. She was suing me because she was attacked by my geese and was demanding compensation for physical and emotional damages. The level of shamelessness is impressive, isn't it? But what she didn't know was that, in court, the truth would fly at her neck faster than Gregorio in attack mode. If I already thought that this woman had lost her grip on reality, the day of the court hearing proved that not only had she lost it, she had thrown it away, stomped on it, and set fire to any vestige of common sense that remained. Because, my friends, this woman had the audacity to go to court, in front of a judge, with a bandaged arm and the expression of someone who has survived an attack by a pack of wolves, to say that my geese were dangerous and that I should pay for all her suffering. But calm down. Let me tell this story properly. When I arrived at the courthouse, I was ready to laugh. The place was full of serious cases being resolved, people worried about divorces, property disputes, and real problems. And then there was this woman sitting there with a case against a group of geese. I really wanted to know what was going through the judge's head at that moment. She was impeccably rehearsed in the role of the victim. She wore a sling, which hadn't been there the day before, by the way, threw dramatic glances at everyone in the room, and made a point of showing every red mark that Gregorio had left on her arm as if they were war wounds. When the hearing began, she gave an epic speech of self-pity. "Your Honor, I am a citizen who just wants to live in peace in the neighborhood, but my life has been turned upside down by these violent animals." The judge just raised an eyebrow and asked her to explain further, and that's when the art began. Her version of events. In the story she invented, it all happened like this. She was strolling peacefully near my property. My geese, without any provocation, brutally attacked her. She tried to run away, but the feathered monsters surrounded her and knocked her to the ground. Ah, yes, because geese are known for hunting humans to death in flocks, right? The judge listened with an incredulous look on his face. Then he gave me the floor, and that's when I took my cell phone out of my pocket. Your Honor, with all due respect, but this story isn't true. In fact, I have proof of what really happened. And then I pressed play on the video. The whole room stopped to watch. There she was, trying to grab Gregorio like he was a bakery chicken. Then the epic fight, the pecking, the desperation, the pathetic attempt to scale the fence. And finally, the great escape, with Gregorio chasing her until the last second. When the video ended, there was absolute silence. The woman turned purple. The judge rubbed his eyes, as if he needed a second to process the level of stupidity of what he had just seen. And then he simply looked at her and said, "Do you want to explain to me why you were inside his property, trying to take one of the geese?" The room erupted in murmurs. She stammered. She tried to say something about that's not exactly what happened, but the judge held up his hand and cut off any ridiculous excuse she was about to make. After a few extra questions and a few more failed attempts by her to justify her idiocy, the judge ended the joke right there. Not only did he completely deny her request, he reprimanded the woman for trespassing and trying to steal an animal. And the best part? She had to pay a hefty fine for filing a false suit and wasting the court's time. Yes, folks, she came out owing money. That was the icing on the cake. When it was all over, I walked out of court victorious, while she left with a bill to pay and a shattered ego. And my geese? Well, they continued to reign over the yard. Gregorio, the great hero of this story, got an extra bucket of corn that night. He deserved it. But do you think that woman learned her lesson? The audience was over. Her shame was eternalized, and, in a perfect world, that would be the end of the story. But no, not only did this woman not learn her lesson, she decided that since she couldn't screw me legally, she was going to give me hell in other ways. Because there are people who, instead of accepting defeat and moving on, prefer to turn their lives into a series of bad decisions. The first few days after court were quiet. She was quieter than usual, probably licking the wounds of her own destroyed pride. But it was a silence that was more like a calm before the storm. And I wasn't wrong, because after a week, she was back in action. Only this time, in an even more childish and ridiculous way. The first thing she tried was to spread rumors in the neighborhood. She started saying that I was dangerous, that I had wild animals running loose, and that I was a threat to the children in the community. What's more, there wasn't a single child in the neighborhood who was walking through my yard, so her argument was literally made up out of thin air. Of course, nobody gave a damn. The people here already knew her history well, and knew that anything that came out of her mouth needed to be filtered with about 3 kilos of salt. Since she couldn't convince anyone with her smear campaign, she decided to sabotage it. Somehow, she found a fake number and started calling me at dawn, leaving weird messages trying to scare me. He would call, stay silent for a few seconds, and then hang up. At other times, he left messages muttering things like, "You'd better be careful," and "Those geese of yours won't last long." A pathetic attempt to intimidate me, as if I was going to stop sleeping because of a bad prank. But then came the final blow, her last shot, the act that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that this woman had given up any trace of sanity she had left. I woke up one morning and went out to the yard as I always did, ready to feed the geese and make sure Gregorio and the rest of the gang were okay. But as soon as I opened the door, I noticed something strange. The side gate was slightly open, and one of the geese was missing. At that moment, my heart froze. I started looking all over the yard, calling to the geese as if they were dogs and would just pop out from behind some bush. But Gregorio and the others were there, except for one. I looked at the fence, looking for some opening, some clue, and that's when I saw the footprints in the dirt near the gate. Human footprints. And they weren't mine. At that moment, I knew exactly who had done it. I went straight out into the street, furious, and I didn't have to walk far to find the scene that would seal this woman's fate once and for all. There she was, in the garden of her house, holding a large bag of feed and trying to get one of my geese into a makeshift cage. The animal was clearly frightened, but at the same time was not at all willing to be kidnapped without a fight. I got close, and, before I could say anything, the goose attacked. If Gregorio was already a warrior, this other one proved he was a worthy disciple. He struggled, bit her arm, and managed to get out of the cage, running back into the street as if he had just escaped from captivity. I only had time to open my arms and hold the animal while looking at her with the worst "I can't believe you did that" face I've ever given. She stood there, her hand red from pecking, looking at me without knowing what to say. And that's when I realized, this time I wouldn't need a court to put an end to it. This time, all I had to do was do what she hated most. Let everyone see what she'd done. And how did I do that? Simple. I took out my cell phone, as I had done before, and started filming. She freaked out. She tried to hide her face, tried to run into the house, but it was too late. Before she could get away, some neighbors started showing up, attracted by the screaming and the goose's dramatic escape. And as soon as they realized what was happening, their expressions were priceless. The couple next door, who had always been suspicious of this woman, started whispering. The retired man on the corner, who always stood on the balcony watching the traffic, laughed. And the guy who lives 2 houses down from me, who never gets involved in anything, simply shook his head and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Steal a goose? Now she's outdone herself." And that's when she realized that the battle was lost. She didn't need the police or any more hearings. The public shame was enough. After that day, she disappeared. Within a few months, the house was sold. And, to the joy of the whole neighborhood, we never had to deal with her madness again. Well, I got on with my life. My geese remained free and happy, without anyone trying to kidnap them in the middle of the night. And Gregorio, the great hero of this story, got an extra bucket of corn that day, because he deserved it. Don't forget to leave your like and comment on what you thought of this video.